Welcome to the Berkeley Research Group Thinkset Podcast. I'm your host, Eddie Newland. Berkeley Research Group is a leading global strategic advisory and expert consulting firm, providing independent advice and dispute consulting around the world to corporations, law firms, government agencies, and financial institutions. For more, please visit thinkbrg.com. On today's episode of the Thinkset Podcast, we're excited to present an exclusive talk with Southwest Airlines President Tom Nealon. BRG Thinkset writer Joe Quinto recorded this interview as part of a feature story for the September issue of Thinkset Magazine. Tom's talk with Joe focused on his efforts to further digitize Southwest.
Hi, Tom. Thanks for talking to me today on the theme of digital disruption. I know that Southwest Airlines is spending $800 million on a series of different technological upgrades, including a $500 million investment in a new reservation system that just rolled out earlier this year. Could you tell me a little bit about the impetus behind these investments?
Our vision is to be the world's most loved, most flown, most profitable airline. All right, not the most profitable, most loved, or most flown in the U.S., but to be the best airline in the world. And we're actually doing quite well against that small objective. What we're really thinking about as we grow the airline, as we scale the airline, what do you need to maintain the kind of efficiency, the kind of cost structure, the kind of customer experience, the kind of hospitality that we are really, really known for? And that's just part of who we are. And we know that as we scale, we have to make sure that we have the underpinning operating model in place to do that. So the first piece of that was really to replace the backbone of any airline's technology infrastructure, which was our reservation system replacement. And that began several years ago. These are not fast projects. These are big things that take a lot of time and a lot of effort, and a lot of buy-in, and just a lot of organizational change. And we implemented the new reservation system in two phases. And the first phase went in December of this past year. And that allowed us to begin to sell in the new system, to sell flights, book flights. And then in December, we turned on the operate side of that. So that's everything that touches the operation, whether it's the customer service agents, the operations agents, people taking the ticket at the gate, that kind of thing. And, there are many, many stories and articles written about reservation system, catastrophes. And I think, if I honestly had to give ourselves a grade, I would say we got an A on the implementation.
Wow.
And, it was a lot of hard work. And, it was not a technology thing. That's probably one of the more important things. I mean, certainly there's a huge technology element to it. But, we have over 50,000 employees, and the vast majority of those employees had to be trained. And it's not just the reservation system, but it's everything that hangs off that reservation system, whether it's the operational systems, for gate and boarding, it's the airport systems, the counters, it's everything that's operational had to be touched at the same time. Our 30-year-old system really just wasn't capable of doing what you need to do 30 years later.
From an operational standpoint, did you have concerns about rolling out the new system? Were there worries that you might not get it right?
Well, sure, because there's no going back. But that kind of goes to the approach we took, where as we were booking in a new system, we're kind of draining the reservations in the old system. So when we cut over on May 9th, there were no old reservations, right? So there's no data conversion. That's where the issue typically comes in the reservation cutover, is the data conversion. But the answer to your question, I guess, more directly is, we were all pretty anxious to go, although we implemented the system first for our international business. So this was not like the first time we've used the system. So we knew it worked, but we'd never seen it work at scale like this. We hadn't had to train this many people. So, there was some apprehension, but it was also a very high degree of confidence because we'd already seen it working in production. So I think we took a pretty unusual approach, actually, and it worked well for us.
So the unusual part being the way that you rolled it out?
Yeah, because oftentimes what you see is you're cutting over. Like, today we're on this system, and tomorrow we're going to be on the new system, and we're going to flow the old reservations into the new system somehow, right? So there's that light switch cutover. Or it might we were bringing up the new system for reservations the day we went live. So on that day, all the reservations were in the system already. There was no conversion.
From a customer-facing standpoint, what does the customer see in terms of this change? Do they even notice it?
Well, honestly, that's part of the objective as well. We did not want the customer to feel a change. All right, it's one thing training all of our employees, 50,000 employees. It's another thing training 125 million customers. So we don't want to do that. So it was really important that from their perspective, the kiosks worked the same, Southwest.com looked the same. When they called the reservation center, the interaction was the same. So from a customer perspective, very, very little, if anything, changed.
And then from the employee standpoint, this really touches the work that just about everybody does there?
Well, it touches everyone within ground operations, which is, what's the number, Chris, 25,000. But certainly everyone within ground operations was impacted. Our call center, our customer support center, they were all impacted. So I would say, honestly, of the 55,000 we have, probably 40,000, 35, 40,000 were impacted significantly. Their work changed. And, that's a lot of change. That's hard change. And they were used to working on a system that they've been using since the day they came here. And it was really tailored and customized to how Southwest did it. And, we put a new system in, which, as you know, is always a challenge. It's really a challenge when you have a line of customers staring at you, right, trying to get to their airplane. So, I think we did a really good job with that as well. And again, I had very little to do with this because I wasn't working with the front line on it. But I think the team did an incredible job of training. And we trained, it was over 500,000 hours of training.
Wow.
A massive amount of training. And there was a massive amount of field support or airport station level support on the day of, the week of, and the month of implementation, where we had experts that were kind of the roaming experts that were just helping the agents wherever they got stuck. And, I think I asked the agent, well, actually I was traveling a while ago, this is probably a few weeks ago, and I asked several agents how they were doing. I said, so before it went live, what was your confidence level or what was your comfort level on a scale of 1 to 10? And the answer was, I've been trained. I felt pretty good. I felt like I knew I could do it, but it's different when you have people there watching you and customers there. So I probably was around 3 or 4. All right, so I wasn't that comfortable, but I knew we were going to do it. We had to do it. And the next question was, so where are you now? And I said, well, we're probably 9. We're really pretty comfortable.
And so functionally, kind of going forward, what does this allow you to do that you couldn't do with the prior technology?
Well, there's a lot of things. If you kind of step back a couple of generations of technology, the notion of integrating a reservation system to the operation systems, the maintenance systems, the dispatch systems is kind of a far-flung idea because back in the day, organizations were fairly siloed and work processes were fairly siloed. So we had to get rid of that. I think that kind of things that the real benefit that we couldn't do previously that we're able to do now, there's lots of benefits, just in terms of how you manage your inventory. Right? We have much more sophisticated capabilities to manage the inventory blocks. We have much more sophisticated ways of managing our revenue management systems. Right? So I think that enables things that we haven't even leaned into yet in a big way. But as Southwest continues to grow, and we're flying more and more international, although it's still a very small part of our business, but that's part of our growth. Being able to transact in foreign currency, foreign point of sale, that kind of thing is a big deal for us. So we need to be able to do that. We need to be able to, now whether we choose to do this or not is a different question. This is a business question. It's a strategy question, but it gives us the ability, which we've never had, to do code sharing and interlining. Right. Now, I'll tell you, our intent to code share is low because our fleet and our crews, our pilots, we have the ability to fly domestically. We have the ability to fly near international. So the only kind of code sharing I could see us doing would be for far international that we just don't intend to do. Right? Far international being Asia or Europe, which is not really within our line of sight today. Maybe in 10 years and 15 years, but in the meantime, we do have passengers that we can connect through Baltimore or through LAX or through LaGuardia, if we chose to, with long-haul international carriers. Now, again, whether or not we choose to do that is a different question, but it's nice to have the capability in your back pocket.
Right.
And we'll have that capability effectively if we choose to do that.
When you're going to make this kind of a change to something this important, do you say, okay, here are the things we want the technology to do, or do you hire technology consultants who come in and say, well, you know what you can do with this? Here are 15 things you can do with it if you wanted to. I mean, do you drive it or do they drive it, in other words?
No, we definitely drove it. We've got people that have been at Southwest for a long time. We have people that have been at other airlines, other carriers that are part of the family now. And we have a very good perspective what we need, what kind of functionality and capability we need, both here and now, as well as setting the path for the future. In terms of setting the path for the future, we have a very clear strategy. We have a very clear business plan, and we know what kind of capabilities we're going to need. So there's the here and now needs, there are things we want to do better, and there's the longer-term strategic things. But, a big piece as well, it's not just the commercial piece that I talked about, which is revenue management, network planning, and code sharing. With the new modern reservation system, this kind of gets into your ops suite questions. Part we want to be able to do is to have very, very tight integration and information flow between our reservation systems, so we know who's buying what, who's on what flights, and our operational systems, so we can, so you know what's going on. So operationally, you can, really think through your regular operations scenario. You've got to know who's on the planes and who's trying to connect where, and there are ways to do that very efficiently and very effectively through technology, and there are ways, if you don't have that connection, you're doing it very manually. It's just not very efficient. So it's not a great customer experience, and it's just not, it's just not an efficient operation. And Southwest Airlines, if nothing else, we are very, very smiley and very, very efficient.
Right. Right.
So you've got to have that kind of efficiency wired into the organization. And it's not going to happen just by the warrior spirit. You've got to give people the tools to do it efficiently.
So you've already rolled out the reservation system. What about the other technology changes that you're making? I think in-house you call the projects collectively Ops Suite. Where do they stand? How much longer before you're fully implemented?
So Ops Suite is not a project per se. It's a series of initiatives. It's an overarching program. And elements of Ops Suite are in place, and elements of Ops Suite will take another 2-3 years to deploy. So it's a very far-reaching set of systems. If you think of the reservation system as being one backbone, I'm not sure you can have two backbones, but it's more the commercial backbone is the reservation system. Well, there's also a corresponding operational backbone, and that would include things like your flight planning systems, your dispatch systems, network control, your crewing systems, your tech ops or maintenance systems, the engineering systems to maintain the planes. When you take those things in total, those things would really encompass what we are considering to be the new operations platform. We were really forced into creating our own ticketing system, our own reservation system years and years ago, the e-ticketing system, because we're kind of the outlier in the industry, and we're kind of a disruptive force in the industry. So we had to create our own, right? And we did that. And then we didn't want to go through the GDSs and through the distribution channels because, we didn't think that was good for us. It cost a lot of money and that kind of stuff. So we were the first ones to create an online store. So we are very capable of being pretty creative and solving problems. So we have a history of it. And that's what we're doing again here. We're just, we're doing it on a bigger scale. But that's what we're doing now.
The $800 million investment that you're making is a significant amount of money. Where would the company be if you weren't making these changes?
We could keep growing. We could keep growing with the tools we had, but you would grow less efficient because it would take more people to do what we're trying to do. I don't mean front line. I mean just the planning and the network control piece. I mean, this is a highly, highly complicated business. So it just became pretty self-evident that if we want to really attain the kind of growth we intend to attain over the next 10 years, you've got to have a better operating capability from a technology standpoint.
And for you personally, how does this compare to what you've been doing over the past few years, the other projects you've done at other companies? I think one of the things I read, one of your early jobs is at Frito-Lay, and you were working on machines that I think maybe your father had initially developed. I mean,
yeah. You do your research.
Right.
Well, I think at this point, I've been in retail, I've been in consumer goods, and I've been in airlines. And I think every industry now is pretty dependent upon technology when you get to the scale like a Frito-Lay or a JCPenney. But from my experience, the airline is probably the most technology-dependent, technology-driven industry I've seen. Technology is a tool. Technology is an enabler. And the better your tools, the better your enablement, the better you're going to be. But it's not going to define the company. I really do sound like a dyed-in-the-wool Southwest guy, but what defines the company really is the people. And if you want to have people that can continue to believe in the company and continue to have the culture strong, they've got to have the tools to do their job well. Because what they're accountable for is treating our customers great and treating each other great. If you don't have the tools, when you're working with that many customers, it's pretty hard to be your best, right? Mm-hmm. So I think the technology is a massive enabler, but it's just that. It's just that. It doesn't define the company.
You had the big disruption last summer, and there have been other airlines that have kind of struggled with those issues as well. Are these kinds of tools that you're implementing now, are they going to head off that kind of stuff?
It was last July 20th. I believe it was 1:32 in the afternoon, if I'm not mistaken. Very, very distinctly. That was a very specific failure within our redundancy architecture. That it shouldn't have happened, but it did happen. And it was really less reflection on the applications and what we're doing today than anything else. It was just one of those anomalies. In fact, I was asked the other day, if you were the CIO, would something like that, or could something like that have happened? And the answer is yeah. I mean, there's so many points of failure. You can't solve every one. You can build a great architecture to mitigate that or to reduce it, but there's always going to be challenges. Now, I'm not sure that answers your question, but certainly new systems with more redundant cloud technologies and this and that will be better. It's certainly going to be better. But this is, what we're doing today is not because of the outage. It's not like we've all of a sudden found religion around technology because we had a big outage. We recovered from the outage. Our people did fantastic in the outage. In fact, they carried the day in the outage. It was really painful. But we're not responding to the outage by all of a sudden getting serious about technology. This was all well underway before that ever occurred.
Was there at any point along this process where you thought, where we're headed isn't going to work, this isn't the right path?
No. I mean, there's always going to be adaptations and course corrections, but I've never wavered in, are we doing the right thing? We need to make these investments. This is the right thing to do. I've never wavered in that, nor has Gary, nor has Mike Vanderbilt, nor has the rest of the leadership team. We all know we need to do this. We also know that this stuff's hard. Right? We all know this is big, hard work, very complex work. But I've really never wavered in, are we doing the right thing? But there's always we're having to change this decision on this solution. Perhaps there's a better one. We should be doing it this way. So there's always adjustments, but I would never say at the broader level, are we investing in the right thing? Are we doing the right thing? We've never had that equivocation. I think it ties back to, is the technology work aligned with the strategy? If it's aligned with the strategy, it's something that it's relatively straightforward for the business to align around. If it's disjointed, if things are not in proper context, and it's not clear how they fit together, it's very hard to get alignment. But if you have a multi-year plan that really begins to frame these things over a 3 to 5 year time frame, we understand the priorities and sequence. It's very easy for people to see the puzzle come together. What's hard is because a multi-year plan is essentially the box top of a puzzle. You see what it's supposed to look like. You see what you're getting. You see where you're going. If you don't have that box top and things are disjointed, all you have are a bunch of puzzle pieces that we're convinced we're going to be able to put these pieces together. It's hard for people to see to what end. What's the purpose of it? So I think on something of this scale, I think when you get into this kind of transformational technology work, technology executive to equivocate or not engage in technology. You can't do that now. You can't have a blind spot towards technology. You have to understand how it all fits. You have to understand the underpinnings, the detail of the technology. You have to understand how it all fits together and why these things are important. I think that we have that here in Southwest, and that's vitally important.
So I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me about all this. It's been fascinating.
Okay, Joe, nice talking with you.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
This Thinkset podcast is brought to you by the Berkeley Research Group. You can subscribe to the podcast and access other content from Thinkset Magazine by going to thinksetmag.com. I'm Eddie Newland, and thanks for listening. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the opinions, position, or policy of Berkeley Research Group or its other employees and affiliates.